Hey guys, welcome back to a new video. I'm Stephanie Fisher. I'm a licensed counselor here in the state of Michigan, and I'm owner and operator of In Progress Counseling. Today we're going to bring up that idea of reflecting again, but this time it's especially useful as a tool when we're trying to disrupt anxiety. Remember that anxiety is a predictive system. Anxiety goes into the future and it starts to use fear to speak with certainty about what could happen or even what will happen, right? It's this very nefarious, kind of harsh interpretation of the future quite often. And so as a predictive system, it asks us to get prepared for the worst or even be immobilized and just fear the worst. Reflection asks us to hold up, what did our fear say and what actually happened? What did our fear say and what actually happened? What did our fear say and what actually happened? The more I'm willing to ask, what's the gap between what I feared and what happened, the more I am equipping myself to disrupt anxiety. So imagine, if you will, here in West Michigan, we have inclement weather that comes in on occasion. We have warnings of inclement weather that come much more often. So it's like the storm of the century. And then 2 inches later, you're like, that felt like a little bit of a disconnect between what we feared and what actually happened. And so because that's true, a lot of us are kind of skeptical when there is the warnings of impending weather, but it's 2 or 3 days out and the weather pattern can shift quite drastically and perhaps it's a non-event, right? So if I were living in the, okay, they predicted it, prepare. Okay, they predicted it, prepare. Okay, they predicted it, prepare. There's this, 5-6 months of bracing for intensity. And the intensity might come along a couple of times throughout those 6-month stretch. But the predictive system warns, oh man, it might be another thing. It might be another thing. Now, if there is a snowstorm, which does happen, and sometimes we get buried under many inches of snow, our job is to be prepared for if there is a big event. But we also watch up until the point of kind of the day of. We watch for indication that the storm is building. We can stay tuned in and check in, hey, is this prediction from a few days ago still active or has it dissipated? We really want to sit in the kind of tracking and understanding, is my predictive system clued into reality? But the reflection piece after the fact is we want to look at what was our response and what was reality. Because if I over-prepared for something, or if I over-exaggerated something, or if I overemphasized something and it wasn't as catastrophic as my brain said, we can start to disrupt anxiety and say, oh yeah, sometimes it feels like a 10 and it ends up being a 3. Okay, it feels like a 10, it ended up being a 3. So when my brain says it feels like a 10, I say, well, 10s in the past have turned into 3s and 4s and 5s. What if I just prepared for the 5? And we can start to disrupt it by putting some language, putting some calibration into it. And reflection is key. Now, there are going to be people that say, but Steph, the storm's a-coming. The storm does happen. And I'm like, you're right. The storm does happen. So I build strategies and I build skills so I can confront storms as they come. I make sure, in this metaphor, that I have my my snow brush, and I make sure that I have good tires, and I make sure that I know where my loved ones are if it's looking like the big event is coming. I make sure that I cancel important appointments or reschedule them if the storm is actually presenting itself, right? So I have the skills to deal with it if it shows up, but I don't let the predictive system turn something into a 10 if historically sometimes it's a 2, sometimes it's a 7, sometimes it's a 4, and sometimes it is a 10. Well, my job is to be prepared for that, but I shouldn't always be prepared for the 10. I shouldn't always be prepared for the catastrophe. That's a lot of energy. That's a lot of over preparation that's going on inside of my physiology and inside of my psyche. And so using that idea of reflection to remind myself, sometimes they warn of a 10, it turns out to be a 3. Sometimes they warn of a 10, it turns out to be a 5. So I'm going to watch, I'm going to stay tuned in, I'm going to be a little prepared here, but I cannot treat everything like a 10. Look for the distinction between my feelings say it's a 10, okay, it was only a 3. My feelings said it was a 10, okay, it was only a 5. The more we reflect on what we feared and what's true, typically the more pushback we can equip ourselves with when anxiety is knocking at our door and inviting us into really catastrophic thinking.